Men don't obsess over availability. They don't lose sleep over someone who is always there, always giving, always explaining. That's predictable. And the human mind doesn't chase what feels guaranteed, but something changes the moment she detaches, not cold, not bitter, just grounded. She stops over explaining, stops over giving, stops trying to be understood by someone who was never trying to understand her in the first place. And suddenly, everything shifts because now there's space. Space where her attention used to be, space where her validation once lived, space that creates a question no one can ignore. Why isn't she reacting anymore? And that question becomes a loop because detachment isn't silence out of weakness, it's silence out of clarity. She's no longer trying to convince someone of her value, she's already decided it. And when someone operates from that place, something powerful happens. They become selective. Not everyone gets access, not everyone gets her energy, not everyone gets her time. And that is where obsession begins. Because people don't crave what they have, they crave what they feel they might lose. And when she detaches, she removes the guarantee. Now her presence is no longer assumed, it's earned. Her attention is no longer constant, it's intentional. And her absence, it becomes louder than anything she ever said. But here's the truth most people miss. Detachment isn't a strategy to make someone chase you. It's a decision to stop chasing what doesn't choose you. It's choosing peace over confusion, clarity over chaos, self-respect over temporary validation. And ironically, that's what makes her unforgettable. Because when a woman no longer needs to be chosen, she becomes impossible to ignore. There is a moment that changes everything, and it's quieter than people expect. No confrontation, no dramatic exit, no final speech that echoes in someone's mind. It's simply the absence of effort. The pause where energy used to exist, the space where attention once flowed freely. That moment is where curiosity is born. People are wired to notice patterns. When something is always there, always available, always predictable, the mind stops questioning it. It becomes background noise. But the second that pattern breaks, the brain wakes up. It starts asking questions it never cared to ask before. What changed? Why the shift? What did I miss? And those questions don't come from logic. They come from discomfort. Detachment disrupts certainty. And certainty is what keeps people calm. When someone knows they can reach you anytime, they relax into that guarantee. They don't feel urgency, they don't feel risk. But the moment you pull your energy back, you remove that safety net. Now there is something at stake, now there is something to lose, and loss, real or imagined, creates focus. This is why detachment feels so powerful. It doesn't force attention. It reveals value. When you stop over-explaining, stop over-giving, stop overextending yourself to maintain a connection, you create contrast, and contrast is what makes people see clearly. They begin to notice what was always there but never appreciated. It's not about playing games. It's about breaking unconscious habits. When you are constantly present in someone's life, they don't have to reach, they don't have to wonder. And without wondering, there is no curiosity. Without curiosity, there is no emotional investment. Detachment reintroduces the unknown. The human mind does not like the unknown. It tries to solve it. It replays conversations, reanalyzes moments, searches for meaning in silence. That silence becomes louder than words ever were. It fills their thoughts because it refuses to give them closure. And here's the part most people misunderstand. Detachment is not about withholding to manipulate. It is about returning to yourself. It is about reclaiming energy that was being spent without return. When you stop making someone the center of your focus, you naturally become less predictable to them. And unpredictability fuels curiosity, because now they can't read you the same way. They can't anticipate your reactions. They can't rely on your presence the way they used to. And that shift forces them to pay attention in a way they never had to before. Attention that is forced fades quickly. Attention that is discovered lingers. When curiosity takes hold, it doesn't let go easily. It grows in silence. It builds in absence. It strengthens every time there is no immediate answer. And the more they think about it, the deeper it embeds itself. All of this begins with one simple shift: choosing not to overextend yourself where you are not equally valued. Choosing to step back instead of leaning in. Choosing to protect your energy instead of proving your worth. And in that choice, something powerful happens. You stop being predictable. You stop being easy to overlook. You become someone who is felt even in absence. Someone who is questioned even in silence. Someone who is remembered without trying to be. There's a quiet shift that happens when someone stops giving their attention freely. No announcement, no explanation. Just a change in how they show up. And suddenly what used to feel constant now feels rare. What used to feel guaranteed now feels uncertain. That's when people begin to understand the true value of attention, because attention was never meant to be unlimited. When it's given too easily, it loses weight. It becomes expected. instead of appreciated. People stop recognizing the effort behind it because they never had to earn it. It's always there, available, consistent, predictable. And predictability, while comfortable, rarely creates desire. Desire grows where there is effort. When someone realizes that your attention is no longer automatic, something shifts in their behavior. They begin to lean in. They start noticing details they once ignored. They pay closer attention to your words, your tone, your absence, not because you demanded it, but because they now feel the need to earn what they once received without effort. This is the difference between presence and value. Presence is just being there. Value is being chosen. And when your attention carries value, it changes the dynamic entirely. You're no longer reacting to others, you're responding with intention. You're no longer filling silence, you're allowing space. You're no longer trying to maintain connection, you're observing who is willing to maintain it with you. That observation reveals everything, because when attention is earned, it filters out those who only stayed for convenience, the ones who disappear when effort is required, the ones who only showed up when it was easy. And what remains are those who recognize that your time, your energy, your focus, those are not things to take lightly. They are privileges, and privileges create respect. It's easy to give attention when you're seeking validation, when you're hoping to be seen, to be chosen, to be valued by someone else, but that kind of attention comes from a place of lack. It's driven by the need to receive something in return, and the moment that return isn't consistent, it creates imbalance. But when attention is earned, it comes from a place of strength. You're no longer giving to be validated, you're giving because it aligns with your standards. You're not chasing connection, you're allowing it to meet you where you stand. And that subtle shift changes everything about how others perceive you, because people can feel the difference. They can feel when your attention is selective. They can feel when your energy is intentional. They can feel when your presence is not guaranteed. And that feeling creates awareness. Now they start asking themselves questions they never considered before. How do I keep this connection? What do I need to do to maintain this level of access? What makes me worthy of this attention? And in asking those questions, they begin to invest. Investment leads to attachment. Attachment leads to effort. And effort is what sustains real connection. The truth is, attention is one of the most valuable things you can offer. It's not just about time, it's about focus. It's about choosing where your energy goes and who gets to experience it. When you give it without boundaries, it becomes diluted. But when you protect it, when you become intentional with it, it transforms into something powerful, something that cannot be ignored, something that cannot be easily replaced. Because in a world where everyone is constantly seeking attention, the person who controls theirs becomes the one everyone notices. There is a line that most people never see, yet it shapes every interaction, every relationship, every level of respect a person receives. It is not spoken out loud, it is not written anywhere, but it is always there, defined quietly by how someone sees themselves. That line is self-worth. And whether people realize it or not, everything begins there, because people don't rise to what you say you deserve. They rise or fall to what you tolerate. The standards you set are not communicated through words, they are revealed through behavior. Through what you accept, what you ignore, what you allow to continue, even when it doesn't align with your values. That is where your real standard lives. When self-worth is low, the standard becomes flexible. Boundaries become negotiable. Disrespect is explained away. Effort is overextended in hopes that it will be returned. And slowly, without even noticing, a pattern forms. One where you give more than you receive, where you stay longer than you should, where you accept less than you deserve. Not because you don't see it, but because you don't believe you can demand more. But the moment self-worth shifts, everything else follows, not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly. You stop explaining your value to people who refuse to see it. You stop negotiating your boundaries to keep someone comfortable. You stop lowering your expectations just to maintain a connection that was never meeting you where you stand. And in that moment, a new standard is set, a standard that says your time is not unlimited, your energy is not disposable, your presence is not something everyone gets access to. And the most powerful part, this standard does not need to be announced. People feel it. They feel it in the way you respond, in the way you walk away from what doesn't align, in the way you no longer chase what doesn't choose you. Because self-worth creates consistency. And consistency builds clarity. There is no confusion about where you stand, what you accept, and what you walk away from. That clarity forces others to adjust. Either they meet your standard, or they remove themselves from your life. There is no middle ground, and that's where respect is born. Not from asking for it, not from demanding it, but from embodying a level of self-respect that cannot be ignored. Because when someone knows their worth, they don't argue for better treatment, they expect it. And expectations shape behavior. People either rise to meet them, or they reveal that they were never capable of doing so. That revelation is not a loss, it is alignment. Because the purpose of standards is not to control others, it is to filter them, to create a space where only those who recognize your value are allowed to stay. Everyone else naturally falls away, not because you push them out, but because they could no longer fit within the boundaries you set. And that's the shift most people are afraid of. Raising your standard means risking disconnection. It means accepting that not everyone will stay when you stop accepting less, but what remains is something stronger, something real. Connections built on mutual respect, mutual effort, mutual understanding, all rooted in one decision, the decision to see yourself clearly, to value yourself without needing external confirmation, to set a standard that reflects who you are, not who you're afraid to lose. And once that standard is set, everything changes, because you are no longer asking to be treated better. You are simply no longer available for anything less. There is a presence that cannot be forced, a kind of energy that doesn't ask for attention yet naturally draws it in. It doesn't come from appearance, status, or constant effort. It comes from something deeper, something steady, emotional independence. Most people move through life seeking connection to feel complete. They look for reassurance, for validation, for someone to confirm their worth. And in that search, they unknowingly give away their power. Their mood depends on someone else's response. Their confidence rises and falls based on attention received or withdrawn. Their peace becomes conditional, but emotional independence changes the equation. It is the ability to feel whole without needing constant external input, to stand in your own presence without rushing to fill silence, to experience connection without depending on it for stability. And that kind of energy is rare, because it cannot be manipulated. When someone is emotionally independent, they do not react out of fear of loss. They do not overextend to keep someone interested. They do not shrink themselves to maintain approval. Their actions are not driven by anxiety. They are guided by clarity. And clarity creates calm. That calm is what people notice first. It's subtle, but it stands out in a world filled with urgency and emotional noise. While others are trying to prove their value, seeking attention, or reacting impulsively, the emotionally independent person remains grounded. They are present, but not attached. Engaged, but not dependent, and that balance creates intrigue, because people are used to emotional patterns, chasing, reacting, overthinking, seeking reassurance. But when those patterns are absent, it creates a gap in expectation, and the human mind doesn't ignore gaps, it tries to understand them. Why aren't they reacting the same way? Why don't they need constant attention? Why do they seem unaffected by things that would disturb others? Those questions become the beginning of attraction, not because emotional independence is trying to impress, but because it refuses to perform. It does not chase connection. It does not cling to outcomes. It does not seek to control how others feel. And in letting go of control, it gains influence. Because influence does not come from force. It comes from presence. From the ability to remain centered regardless of external circumstances. From the quiet confidence that says, I am enough as I am, with or without this situation. That confidence shifts dynamics instantly. People begin to invest more. They become more aware of their actions. They start valuing the connection differently. Not because they were told to, but because they feel the difference, and feeling is what drives behavior. Emotional independence creates space. Space for others to step forward, space for effort to be shown, space for true intentions to surface without pressure or expectation. And in that space, authenticity either grows or disappears. There is no pretending where there is no pressure. And that is what makes emotional independence so powerful. It removes the need to control outcomes. It allows connections to unfold naturally. It reveals who is genuinely aligned and who is only present out of convenience. But the real strength lies deeper. It is the ability to walk away without losing yourself, to stay without needing to hold on tightly, to care without becoming consumed. That balance is not easy to reach. It requires self-awareness, discipline, and the willingness to face discomfort without escaping into distraction or dependency. But once it is developed, it changes everything. Because now your energy is no longer scattered. Your focus is no longer divided. Your worth is no longer questioned. You become steady. And in that steadiness, something powerful happens. You stop trying to attract attention, and instead you become someone who naturally holds it. There is a kind of power that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't argue, explain, or try to be understood. It simply exists in the absence of noise. That power is silence. Most people believe influence comes from saying the right thing at the right time, from convincing, persuading, proving a point until it is accepted. But the truth is, words often lose their impact when they are used too often. When everything is explained, nothing is felt. When every emotion is expressed immediately, there is no space left for reflection. Silence creates that space. It interrupts expectation. It breaks the rhythm people have grown comfortable with. When someone is used to your reactions, your replies, your effort, your constant presence, and suddenly that pattern disappears, it creates a gap. And the human mind does not ignore gaps. It tries to fill them. That is where silence becomes louder than anything you could say. Because now, instead of hearing your words, they are hearing their own thoughts. They begin to question, and they begin to replay. They begin to search for meaning in what is no longer being given. Why didn't they respond? Did something change? Did I miss something important? And those questions don't fade quickly. They repeat, they grow, they echo in a way that spoken words rarely do, because silence removes closure, it removes certainty. And without certainty, the mind stays active. Words can end a conversation, silence extends it. But this kind of silence is not passive. It is not avoidance. It is not about withholding communication out of fear or confusion. It is intentional. It is chosen from a place of awareness. It is the decision not to react immediately, not to explain unnecessarily, not to engage in situations that do not deserve your energy. That decision creates control, because when you are not rushing to respond, you are no longer operating on impulse. You are no longer giving others the ability to dictate your emotional state. You are choosing when to speak, how to speak, and whether speaking is even necessary. And that choice changes how people perceive you. They begin to listen more carefully. When you do speak, they begin to value your words because they are not constant. They begin to notice your absence because it is not predictable. Silence in this way becomes a filter. It removes unnecessary noise. It reveals who is paying attention and who is only reacting to convenience. It shows who is willing to lean in when there is no immediate response and who walks away when effort is required, because when everything is said, nothing needs to be discovered. But when silence is present, curiosity grows. People start filling in the blanks with their own assumptions, their own emotions, their own interpretations. And those interpretations often carry more weight than anything you could have explained directly, because they are personal, they're self-created, they feel real, and what feels real is remembered. Silence also protects energy. Not every situation deserves a response. Not every comment requires clarification. Not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected. When you choose silence in those moments, you are not losing your voice. You are refining it. You are deciding that your words will carry meaning, not just sound. That restraint creates presence, because presence is not about how much you say. It is about how deeply you are felt. And sometimes the strongest presence is the one that does not speak at all. It is felt in the pause, in the absence, in the space where something used to be. And that space has weight. It lingers longer than words. It echoes louder than explanations. It stays in the mind because it refuses to give immediate answers. That is the power of silence. It does not chase attention. It makes attention come looking for it. There is a misconception that detachment means pulling away, becoming cold, creating distance to protect yourself from being hurt. But real detachment is not about distance. It is about control. It is the ability to remain steady without being consumed, to stay present without losing yourself, to care without surrendering your power. Most people confuse attachment with connection. They believe that the closer they hold on, the stronger the bond becomes. So they invest more, give more, tolerate more, hoping that effort will secure the relationship. But the more they try to hold everything together, the more they lose their center. Their emotions become tied to outcomes they cannot control. Their peace becomes dependent on someone else's behavior. That is not connection, that is dependence. Detachment breaks that cycle. It does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop controlling. You stop trying to force alignment where it does not naturally exist. You stop overextending yourself to maintain something that requires constant effort just to survive. And in doing so, you create something rare, space. Space for clarity, space for truth, space for reality to reveal itself without interference. Because when you are attached, you see what you want to see. You ignore red flags, justify inconsistency, and hold on to potential instead of reality. But when you detach, your vision sharpens. You begin to see people for who they are, not who you hope they will become. And that awareness is power. Power is not controlling others. Power is controlling yourself. It is the ability to walk away when something no longer aligns, even when emotions try to pull you back. It is the discipline to choose long-term peace over short-term comfort. It is the strength to let go of what feels familiar when it no longer feels right. That kind of power is quiet, but it is undeniable. Because when someone is detached in this way, they are no longer easy to influence. They do not react impulsively. They do not chase validation. They do not seek approval at the cost of their own standards. Their decisions come from clarity, not fear, and that changes how others respond to them.
People begin to sense that they cannot be controlled through attention or withdrawal. They realize that emotional games have no effect.
That inconsistency does not create confusion, it creates distance. And that realization forces a shift. Either they rise to meet the standard, or they fall away. Detachment does not push people away. It reveals who belongs, because when you stop forcing connection, only genuine connection remains. There is no pressure, no performance, no need to prove anything, just alignment, just mutual effort, just clarity. And clarity removes chaos. You are no longer questioning where you stand. You are no longer overanalyzing mixed signals. You are no longer waiting for someone to become who they said they would be. You see things as they are. And that truth, even when uncomfortable, is freeing, because now your energy is no longer tied to uncertainty. It is directed toward growth, toward purpose, toward things that give back what you invest. You are no longer drained by situations that require constant emotional maintenance. You become grounded, and that grounded energy creates respect. Not because you demand it, not because you ask for it, but because it is felt. It is felt in the way you do not chase, in the way you do not beg for consistency, in the way you walk away without needing closure from someone who never gave you clarity. That is not distance, that is discipline, that is self-respect in action. And when someone operates from that place, they are no longer trying to hold on to everything. They are choosing what deserves to stay.